The Basketball Hall of Fame 60 Days of Summer is your chance to see your favorite basketball stars live and in person. Check hoophall.com for a complete list of all these exciting appearances and plan your trip today.
How's everybody? Wonderful, wonderful.
All right, Reggie, so we're gonna start with the Wayback Machine a little bit here. Let's talk a little bit about your first memory with a basketball.
Wow, first memory. That is way back. First memory. Well, I used to sit in my front yard, and I used to just dribble the basketball on my porch while I was watching TV, and that was my first time I really started handling the basketball. I built my first basketball court myself. I put together some wood. I took a speed bag, the ring that goes around the speed bag. I took the speed bag thing and I nailed it onto the wood. And then I got it up on the roof, and of course I tore my mom's roof up. And she wasn't real happy about that. But that was my first memory of my first basketball court, and my first real memory of basketball was sitting on my front porch, dribbling the basketball, because my mom used to get mad at me, spank my butt for dribbling the ball in the house. So she made me go on the front porch.
Anybody out here have their own hoop? Anybody here make their own hoop? Raise your hands quickly. Perfect. I see a couple hands.
You made your own hoop. Nope. So, and we used to also take the end of a basketball, the old garages where they have the little bar that goes underneath the garage. I don't know what it's for, actually. But we used to take a rim and hang it in between. And it was kind of like that. We took a volleyball, and then we played basketball like that. It's a lot of fun. A lot of, Connie Hawkins, Dr. J's, all that kind of stuff. Only thing is that when you hit it too hard, it falls off, and you got to pick it up and put it back. You make it work.
So talk a little bit about the time that occurred between tearing up your parents' roof and by the time you got to high school. What happened in that few-year period? Where did you learn your game? How did your game develop? Did you know you had something special?
Well, I was a baseball player long before I started playing basketball. I didn't even think very much about basketball. I played football. I was quarterback and wide receiver. I played every position on the infield. I pitched and played third base. I always thought I was going to be a baseball player. So basketball really didn't become important to me until I got actually in high school, like maybe my sophomore year. I was the smallest. Who's the smallest guy? Any guys, small guys on the basketball team? Don't worry. Don't worry. I was the smallest guy on my 8th grade team. The smallest guy. I was so into baseball at the time. I had a baseball game on the same night I made the AllStar basketball team. I gave up my position on the basketball team because I didn't want to miss my baseball game. So I always thought that having the ability to play other sports, basketball I think is, because the rim is 10 feet. Obviously they have the adjustables. Back when I was a kid, we didn't have adjustables. You didn't have them either, did you? No, you had to hoist the ball way up there. I think baseball is one of those sports that really teaches you hand-eye coordination. It teaches you, how to hit the ball, throwing the ball up and hitting it. It's amazing. I'm a firm believer the things that you do as a child in developing has a lot to do with what type of athlete you become. Because, just sitting there dribbling the basketball, I learned how to typewriter with the ball. Is that ball flat? Let's see.
Guess as good as mine.
This is one of the things I learned how to do. When I was a kid, I used to sit there and just do this all day long. And even though it was fun for me, I didn't realize that I was teaching myself how to dribble the basketball until I got to the point where I could almost do it till the ball was just barely coming off the ground. Just little things like that really taught me how to handle the basketball. I always tell people all the time, you don't have to have a gym. You don't have to have a great court, or you don't have to. We used to run hurdles over the trash cans in my driveway. I mean, there's all kinds of things you can do sports-wise to have fun, but that's different in my era because you guys do all you're playing now like this. Huh? Huh? That's what you guys do now. But we used to have to get out of the house. And my mom didn't want to see me again until the lights came on, the street lights came on. Hey, you remember, right?
So let's talk about, you grew up, you went to high school in Inglewood High School in California. You want to talk a little bit about your playing career at high school? You had a couple pretty good years there, if I do recall.
Yeah, no, it was always really interesting. Interesting enough, I was the first year in California where they integrated California from one side of the city to the other side. So it was a very interesting time in my life, being exposed to other cultures and different people. And so it was a lot of fun for me in that atmosphere. Basketball-wise, I played freshman basketball. I didn't start as a freshman on my high school team. I didn't play varsity until the end of my sophomore year, which is still pretty good. But you know, a lot of guys, they go straight in and they play varsity right away. I say that because I was one of those kids that really grew into who I became as an athlete. Even though I was a very good athlete, like I said, basketball was not my main sport for a long time. And I was small. I was 5'10" as a freshman in high school. Then when I graduated, I was 6'5", and I grew 2 inches in college. So I was a point guard. Then I turned into a power forward, and then back to a point guard.
Real quick, any Celtics fans
And, you know,
here?
I played against Bill Laimbeer. Bill Laimbeer, you guys, some of you old guys, you know Bill Laimbeer, right? Bad Boys. Yes, no, yes. Yeah, he was the same way in high school, by the way. You know what I mean?
I asked the question quickly. Is there any Celtics fans here? And I'll explain why I'm asking that. Anybody know who else went to Inglewood High School? Paul Pierce, absolutely. So I'm going to ask that quick question. Are you the best hoops player ever to come out of Inglewood?
That's funny. It's funny you say that. You must have read that someplace because I have a selfie of me and Paul from 2 days ago because we did the Special Olympics is in Los Angeles this weekend, and he and I did some stuff for Inglewood, and I took a selfie of he and I, and I had a chance to tell the story. I was working for TNT. And my very first interview with Paul, we laughed. My very first interview, I had the mic, TNT mic in my hand, and I walked up to Paul in the middle of the Boston Garden, and I said, Paul, on national television, so how does it feel to be the second best player out of Inglewood High School? What a sport. What a sport. He laughed hard. And, you know, we had different careers. Both of us really good high school players. Paul obviously has more rings than I have, so he has, what, 3? Or at least 3. I have 0. So I guess, and he made more money, so I guess maybe he's the best. I don't know. But Inglewood High School was a great place for us to play basketball. And the interesting part is I graduated high school, I'm going to date myself here, in 1975. Paul's jersey got retired before mine, but he did build a locker room. I didn't, so it worked out okay.
So anybody who watches TV nowadays, the recruiting process from high school to college is so overwhelmingly televised, talked about, discussed about. You ended up landing at UNLV. You want to talk a little bit about the recruiting process and what it meant to you and how that whole process went?
Yeah, you know, my very first letter I ever got was from Gonzaga. Everybody know Gonzaga, the University of Gonzaga? And interesting enough, John Stockton was one of the players that they talked about in that letter. Not that in that letter, that later on he went to Gonzaga, and it was really it never left my mind that was my very first letter. I ended up getting letters from every place in the country, and I think people found out that I wasn't really interested in going too far away from Los Angeles. You know, I did try really hard to take a trip to University of Hawaii. I wanted to go so badly, but I guess they found out and told me, no, sorry. But interesting enough, in 1975 is when John Wooden retired, and I was slated they thought I was going to go to UCLA, but when he retired, it kind of changed things. And then thus, UNLV played the style of basketball that I liked. And really, I wasn't into the big schools. I wasn't into the hoopla of how big the university was or how big the conference was. But there was a little school in the desert called the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, with this funny-looking guy named Jerry Tarkanian that wanted me to come play for him. They played an up and down style of basketball. You know, I don't know if you guys understand this or not, but we scored 110 points a game with no three-point line. Now, if you equate that to with today's style and the way people play today, it's pretty amazing how many points we scored. Thus, we were called the Running Rebels. The up-tempo, fast-breaking style of basketball really was the pinnacle of what that's all about. There's been people that have done it after, but nobody scored, nobody played like we broke 8 NC2A scoring records, and the only time the crowd got mad at us is when we didn't score 100 points, which is interesting. I can only remember one time being booed at college, and that was because we didn't make 100 points. And Vegas is an interesting place. You know, Vegas, they see losers all the time. You know, so they yeah, you guys have been there, huh? Yeah. So they were really interested in the style and the fun, the fast pace, and it was really a perfect school for me to go to. 8 guys got drafted off of that team, and we made the Final Four at UNLV in '77. And ironically, it was Dean Smith and Jerry Tarkanian coaching against each other. And it's just amazing. They both actually passed, you know, within a week or two of each other. Also, pretty interesting cross of lives there.
Well, I definitely want to talk a little bit more about each of those. But you mentioned playing under the goofy-looking, legendary coach Jerry Tarkanian. Can you talk a little bit about? I mean, for those younger kids especially who may not be as familiar with Tark, can you talk a little bit about Tark's coaching style and really what he meant to you?
You know. Tark was kind of a chameleon. You know, he taught me that there's 100 different ways to coach. And his philosophy was always, he said there's 2 styles of coaches. There's a style of coach that has a system and wants to make every player that he gets play within that system, force them to play that system. And then there's a coach that recruits a player and then develops a system around his team. And that was Tark. He went from being an all-zone team when he was in his younger days at Long Beach and Riverside to all we did is pressed and played man-to-man the entire time I was in college. We played 40 minutes of nonstop pressure basketball. That was his mantra. We want to play 40 minutes of pressure, nonstop basketball. Funny guy, though. He would talk to you. I tell people all the time, bless him, I think about it, it makes me smile so much. He's one of those guys who's so intense and so exciting about the game that he would talk to you until he just run out of air. It was like, and he'd have to take a breath. I was like, just slow down, slow down. I had a big afro at the time. You guys, no afros in the house, huh? Had a big afro, and he was starting to lose his hair. And he said, hey, Reg, if you cut your hair, if you cut your afro down, I'll shave my head bald. Well, the point is he was already losing his hair because he was starting at the time, he was taking a little piece from over here and pulling it way over here, So just a character, he had some of the greatest halftime speeches. When he'd get mad at us, he would say, you're all robbing the university. Next time you go pick up your scholarship check, wear a mask.
So I was going to follow it up and say what's your best Tark story, but that's pretty good. So I'm going to ask this question. And any of you remember seeing Tark on the sidelines? Did you ever catch any shrapnel from that towel he used to chew on quite a bit?
Yeah, I heard stories about the infamous towel. And obviously that story is taken on a whole life of its own. That actually happened by accident because he was trying to get some water and there was no cups. So the guy wet a towel from the what do you call the thing that has the water in them, the Gatorade thing that you dump on the coaches. And he wet a towel, and Tarks started sucking on the towel. And after that, they won the game, and he was so superstitious that he never wanted to change. So that's really, people always thought there was vodka on the towel. It was all water.
So for those of you that may not be aware with some of Reggie's stats, I'm going to be the one who's not going to be modest here and say he's one of the best players ever to come out of the University of Las Vegas, Nevada. I want to talk a little bit about your sophomore season there. You touched on it really briefly. 29-3, Final Four run, first time the school's ever been to the Final Four. Talk about that run a little bit, and I mean the points you mentioned, the scoring records, the 100-point games, the 12 in a row, 23 in total for the year. I mean, talk a little bit about what that really meant as a player, as part of that team.
Just a phenomenal team. In my college, I went pro as a junior. Back in those days, they called it hardship. Now they just go. I lost 3 college basketball. I'm sorry, I lost 12 games my entire college career. Just an incredible team. I had 4 guys on the team that shot the ball better than me. I had 4 guys on the team that had, Tark was, even though we played up and down and it was fast paced, we could have used a 10-second clock. It was very structured. And that's something that people don't really understand, that you can play fast, you can play up-tempo, but you can be very structured in what you do. I tell my players now at Cal State Northridge that along with great freedom comes great responsibility. And if you're going to play this way, you have to be disciplined, because you can't, you just can't play out there, just play rat ball. You have to have some structure. We had numbered lanes. I could only run my lane. I had an absolute area where I could shoot if I was comfortable in that shot, in that spot when I got the ball. Tark didn't care, but I couldn't shoot outside my area. It was really interesting because guys worked so hard. If I was over here on this side and my lane was number 2, my lane was over there, I couldn't run this side of the floor. I had to cross and run down the other side of the floor. Now, you have to remember, in those days, we played so fast that if you really didn't run hard, you had no chance of getting the ball. So basically, it was a race to see who can get the shot. So it was just very structured, and it taught me how to be free at the game, have fun with the game, but be very disciplined with the game. And ultimately, to win games, you have to be able to execute at the end. And that's what we were able to do. We defensively, it was another thing that we did. Defensively, teams averaged in a college game almost 25 turnovers a game against us, because we pressed the entire game. And people say, well, how do you score that many points? Well, you score that many points by your defense. If you're turning teams over, you have more possessions. Well, they say, well, you're not playing very good defense because the other team's scoring a lot too. Well, that has to do with possessions, number of possessions. Because you're playing fast, because you're shooting the ball quick, the other team has more chances to score. But when it's all said and done, it's a great way to play basketball. It was a phenomenal team. Like I said, I was the 3rd, 4th best shooter on the team. So, think about that for a minute when you talk about guys that can put the ball in the basket. It was just an incredible team to play for. But one more, the biggest thing was we took our defense very serious. When it became the most exciting part to us, scoring was what we did. But when we called it a quick 6. When we would pick up a team at the baseline, and 3 times in a row, they couldn't get it past half court. We'd steal the ball, score. They'd pick it up, we'd steal it again, score. We did it 3 times. We called it a quick 6. And that got us really going when that happened. So it was just a lot of fun. And then obviously with Vegas growing so quickly, it was a great time to be in Las Vegas and be with Coach Tarkanian. The Final Four run was one of the best times of my entire life. We lost that game by 1 point. And it was, sometimes you live by the gun, you die by it. Our jumpers went cold and they got hot, and ultimately they won the game.
So you mentioned that team, and you mentioned being 2 or 3 or 4 shooters that were better than you on that team, and you mentioned the history and the legacy of UNLV and the amount of great players that university has produced. I'm going to mention 2 moments to you. I just want you to briefly reflect on both of them, if you could. The first being inducted into the UNLV Athletics Hall of Fame. What does that mean to you?
Wow. Well, I mean, there's probably, I think there's no more than eight players that are hanging in the rafters of the Thomas and Mack, and it's always an honor when your school, it doesn't matter if you're regular job, high school, junior high school, anytime you're acknowledged for a job well done, it's appreciated. And in the world of sports, having your jersey hung from the rafters is the ultimate compliment. You know, what it did for me is it embedded me in the history of the school for forever. So it's a proud moment. You know, my mom passed this year, a couple months ago rather, and you know, she was there. It was and my dad passed when I was a junior in high school. So my kids were there, and it became a family event. And as you get older, you know, it's funny because, you know, Tark and I, he was my coach when I was playing, but as I got older, we became closer friends, and it just means so much to me to ever go back to the Thomas and Mack and see my jersey up there. My kids get a chance to see my jersey sitting up there, and they always say, because the NBA Summer League is played at the Thomas and Mack in Las Vegas, so I get phone calls all summer about everybody seeing my jersey up there, so I kind of like that too.
Well, that was going to be my second, was the jersey hanging, but he was also being a little bit modest. You're one of 6, not 8, just so you know, so I'm making it look even better for you.
All right. Sorry, I didn't really know.
So let's fast forward a little bit. Let's talk about leading up to the NBA draft. Did you know where you're going? What was that whole process like?
No, I didn't. You know, they didn't have the big hoopla they have now when everybody goes to New York. I was a junior when I left to go to play in the NBA, and you know, I was the 9th player picked as a junior, so I would have been a lottery pick. So I would have been in New York, standing up with the commissioner and all that kind of stuff. Would have been great. But no, I didn't know what was going on. Interesting enough, the Chicago Bulls drafted me as a defensive player. Maybe that's why they were so bad early, I don't know. But I think because I played the front of the press in college. I was the 6'7" point guard, played the 2 guard, but I was the point in our press. And the guy at the time, Rod Thorne, thought that I would have just been a phenomenal defensive player. But then when I got to the NBA, was actually the last time I really ever played defense. My job became scoring, so I started scoring and let somebody else play defense.
So let's talk about that a little bit. You go to the Bulls as a rookie, you average just over 16 points a game. How did you make that transition so quickly? I mean, scoring 16 points a game as a rookie is a pretty impressive feat. Well,
it was really interesting because the Chicago Bulls at that time was a real blue-collar, walking up the court, grinded-out team. And some of you guys might remember this guy or might not. Larry Costello was my first NBA head coach. Now, Larry Costello in 78 still had a crew cut, had plaid pants, wore white shoes, kicked me out of practice because I put the ball behind my back. So he was real old school. And so for me to go to the Chicago Bulls was really interesting because it was the style, being California, being Chicago, was very different. But I found a way. And the interesting part about playing sports in general is you can make up a lot of excuses of why you don't do your job. You guys have a lot of excuses why you don't play well? Do you guys have a lot of you do? You have a lot of excuses? Good job. Good job. You'll be looking for a job one of these days, and you'll say, well, I can't have excuses. But playing for the Bulls at that time, I had a coach that didn't want me to play a certain style. And even in the regular jobs, even no matter where you guys are, you have to find a way to be successful at what you do, regardless of the political aspects or the corporate way things are done. You have to. And I always say you have to do things in a corporate way. It's the same things. You have to do things within the concept of the team. Both of those concepts are actually very much the same. But it's up to you to find a way to be the best at what you do. So that, to me, was the biggest challenge for me as a rookie, is to find a way to play my style of basketball within the concept of slowing the ball down. And I was able to do that.
Well, I would say you were able to do it pretty well because you went from 16 points a game to 20 points a game as your second year to 23 points a game as your third year, a couple All-Star appearances. Talk about that run as a professional in the era that you played in with the competition you played in. I mean, reflect on that run a little bit for us.
You know, it's to me, obviously I'm biased, but to me it's the greatest time in NBA history. Playing against Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Michael Jordan, Iceman, George Gervin, Dr. J, you know, all the guys, Earl Monroe. I even caught, I tell you what, here's how old I am. My first year, I played against Walt Frazier and Pistol Pete Maravich. How about that? Don't clap because I'm old. You know, isn't that amazing? But here's the best part. They both have bad knees. So I caught them on a down time, but I tore them up. But I can, it's my story, right? But I know that they were working with one leg, but that's okay. I get a chance to tell the story later.
So anybody with audience questions, keep thinking them. In a few minutes, we're going to prompt you for a few of those. We're going to have a few more questions first, though. You had a great run with the Bulls, no question about that. It's well documented, the trade from the Bulls to the Kings. Talk a little bit about what it was like playing for one team for a few years and all of a sudden just uprooting and playing for another. I mean, talk about that experience a little bit.
Well, my rookie year, I guess there's a couple of things here. My rookie year, I have a Dr. J story. You guys all know Dr. J, right? You guys know Julius Erving. You know, everybody knows Michael Jordan, right? Okay. So my first year playing against Dr. J, I was in such awe of Dr. J. I mean, he's coming up the court. I stole the ball from him in the back court. And I'll never forget reflecting the fact that I stole the ball from Dr. J. I was almost laughing. And by the time I got to half court, he stole it back from me. That's like what happened. I remember playing against Michael Jordan, and back in those days, we had the Jordan rules. And I was back on defense. Michael was coming at me, and about the top of the key, his tongue came out, and I could see it in his eyes. He was about to dunk on me. Of course, I had fouls to give. He never made it to the rim. He ended up on the floor, which was normal. So my Chicago days were great. I really never thought that I would leave Chicago, but the transition from going to Kansas City and the Kansas City team moving to Sacramento, you know, I played for most of my career in Chicago and with the Kings. What happened is when I was in Chicago, I thought I was going to live there forever, but then when I got traded, I was like a man without a city to live in. So I bought a house back home. That became my home base. I learned that you have to have a home base. And wherever I played after that didn't matter.
So we mentioned the run with the Bulls. We mentioned the run with the Kings. If anybody didn't hear it correctly earlier, yes, it's true. He did score over 19,000 points in the NBA. And for any of you kids who want to do some research, you won't find many players in the league still today that have ever scored that many points. So can you talk a little bit about how as you got older, as you're in the league longer, how you still kept your game up, how your game transitioned?
You know, it's funny. I will say this. When I turned 30, I had a conversation with my coach at the time. His name is Jerry Reynolds, and he was telling me about Hondo. Anybody know who Hondo is? Who's Hondo? Huh? John Havlicek. There you go. How John Havlicek, when he turned 30 in the summer, how he loses weight. So when I turned 30, I was playing at about 215, and I turned 30 years old. I know it's on the other side of my career. The coach said, Reggie, it's time for you to change your body. It's time for you to take the little bit of pressure off your knees. So for the first time, I got a trainer, and I dropped all the way down to 200 pounds. I leveled off about 208. What that did for me at the end of my career is I really never lost a big step. Numbers-wise, my last year in 91, my numbers were almost the exact same as they were when I was 25 years old. And I really contribute that to being in better shape. That's why now, see, today's athletes, these guys are amazing because of the technology and the understanding of how to work out. And most of these guys have trainers, and they do all these things. To tell you how backwards we were when I played, early in my years, they would make you take salt tablets and then wouldn't let you drink water. So, salt tablets make you thirsty. You know, so that's how crazy it was. But now, obviously, you go to jail if you did that now.
Real quickly, who's the toughest opponent?
Toughest opponent has always been Michael Jordan. Magic Johnson was always tough. Larry Bird was difficult. He caught me under the basket one time, and he said, "Give me the ball. I got a turkey on me." Of course, I forearmed him. Took a foul. I fouled you. I'm going to sit down now. Thank you. But Michael Jordan was always tough. I have a great story about George Gervin. We don't have enough time to tell you, but George Gervin I have so much respect for because, you know, just a quick one. George Gervin and I played. I was a rookie. George weighs about 150 pounds, soaking wet. Not now. He's changed a lot. But my rookie year, I was playing against George Gervin, and I was so excited to play against. I'm gonna cut this short. I'm gonna cut this in half. I was so excited to play against him. The first time he touched the ball, I poked him in his eye. It was an accident. The next time he got the ball, I knocked him down because I was just so excited. We ended halftime. We were winning by 14, and George wasn't playing well. People were patting me on my back, telling me, you know, I was a rookie. So I was thinking, George Gervin, shh, I got this. You know, come out in the second half. I had no fouls. Come out in the second half. By the time the game was over, we were down 14. George had 35, and I had fouled out. So he taught me a lot.
For any of you that doesn't know who George Gervin is, take a walk upstairs, and you'll be able to see his full story and understand what Reggie was talking about there.
Yeah, he's the one that would tell you, young fella, I'm going to take you to the baseline. I'm going to shoot it off the glass with my left hand, and do it.
We'll call on the audience questions now. Whenever you're ready, come on up. Just say your name when you get to the microphone and ask your question for Reggie.
I just want you to know if I don't like the question, you have to do 10 push-ups. And don't talk while the coach is talking. Okay.
My name is Nate, and I'm from New York. And my question is, when you go to a away game and you're shooting free throws, do you get really nervous? And how do you deal with it?
How do you deal with being nervous at the free throw line? Try not to get fouled. No, really, it's no way around that. I think it's normal, but you have to shoot thousands and thousands of free throws so that every time you step up to the line, it's a normal thing. And when you're making, I was 85% from the free throw line for my career, so I used to beg people to foul me. I wanted to be fouled, so I didn't get nervous, but there was a big game once where I missed a big free throw, and to this day, I have a scar in the back of my mind from that game. But it's just one of those things where you have to get up there and shoot thousands and thousands of free throws so that you're so confident that you don't have to worry about it. But being nervous is okay. Being scared is okay. You have to overcome those things. It's part of being an athlete. It's part of sports. Because that's adrenaline, makes you ball your fists up and play harder. Makes you concentrate more, right? You've been there. What sport do you play?
Basketball.
You play baseball, so basketball and baseball. All right, well, keep working at it, okay? Thank you very much.
Great question, bud. Thank you. Next.
What do I say? My name is Jaden Vital, and I'm from Miami. And my question is, have you scored more than 30 points in your NBA game?
Have I scored more than 30 points? Yes. My career best was, I want to say 48, but it might be 46. 46. But the best part is I did it in the Boston Garden with Larry Bird on the floor, McHale, Parrish, Dennis Johnson, old Boston Garden. We didn't win the game, but I guess that's normal when you go to the Garden. But that was my career best, 46.
Thank you, bud.
Thank you.
Good question. Next.
How you doing?
Hi. My name is JP. I'm from Long Island, New York. My question is, how easy was the transition from being a player to a coach? And were there any specific coaches that maybe mentored you, or you picked up a particular style from them?
Yeah, it's a great question. It really is a great question because it's a There's like 5 different layers to that question. But not every great player makes a great coach. You know, coaching is about communication. Coaching is about being able to articulate your thoughts in a way that people understand you. And I've had, unfortunately, in my career, in 13 years, I've had 16 coaches. That's ridiculous, isn't it? No, they're seriously ridiculous. And I've seen it done wrong as many times as I've seen it done right. So I learned as much from the guys that did it wrong as I did from the guys that did it right. And you remember those things. And I remember, even today, my coaching philosophy, I find that most coaches, and this is, and you guys are all different type of athletes in here and different sports people. Most coaches and most teams that are good, they're all kind of similar. Like very seldom do you see a coach that is so odd or out of the box, that does things so differently, that is really successful. The game is very simple. It's when you can make the game complicated, it's when it becomes difficult. The biggest transition for me, I guess, was just deciding that's what I wanted to be. Because as a player, I didn't like any of my coaches when I played, so I didn't want to become one of those. But you know, we always end up being that guy, right? You always end up being. Just wait till you're grown. I hope your kids do the same thing to you do to me. You know, it's, you know the whole thing. But that was the biggest transition, is making the transition to become a coach and wanting to. And I tell you, I had I did TV. I did ESPN and TNT and Fox for 9 years. I was on TNT. I did Kenny and Charles at halftime. I did that before them, back in the virtual days before it got really fancy. And I remember sitting and talking to Hubie Brown. I remember sitting and talking to Mike Fratello. Sitting talking to Dick Versace and a bunch of different coaches. And I realized at that point that I knew all the things that they were talking about. And I got the job with Coach Pitino at the University of Louisville. And I had a paper bag. I always say I had a paper bag full of basketball knowledge. And Coach Pitino showed me the blueprint of what to do with all that knowledge. The difference between a veteran coach and a young coach is how to get from A to B in a straight line. Couldn't be a better mentor. Yes, thank you very much.
Great question, thank you. Next, please.
Are you guys okay over there? Now I know half of this stuff you don't know anything I'm talking about, right? It's okay. I'm not embarrassed. It's okay. Do you know what you're talking about? You raised your hand.
Just your name and what the question is.
My name is Jake. I was wondering, how many points do you, you scored 16 points, around 16 points a game in your rookie year. Was that considered a lot compared to other players for their rookie year?
You started off kind of shaky, but you got that out, didn't you? You worked it out. Very good question. That's a really good question, matter of fact. 16 points a game as a rookie is a lot. You know, you don't see very many guys score that many points as a rookie. I don't even know how that happens, other than the fact that I was playing on a team that allowed me to play the minutes that I needed to play. One of the things I'm most proud of as a rookie is my first six years in the league, I didn't miss a game, and to me that was more important than even the scoring the points. Not missing a game. That means you played hurt. That means you play when you didn't want to play. That means that when you get a hangnail, you don't go sit out for 2 weeks, like some guys I know now. Nice question. Thank you.
Great question.
You have another question? Go ahead.
One more, sure.
I had another question. Was there one player that really made a difference in your career?
What player? Yeah. Well, George Gervin. Michael Jordan made a big difference, because if you didn't guard Michael a certain way, he would embarrass your entire team. So you had to guard Michael differently. But no, I think Magic Johnson, who was one of the only other guys. Magic Johnson is taller than me. We both played point guard. So he also was really influential in my game.
Great questions, bud.
Thank
Thank you. Next, please.
Hello, my name is Nicholas Ezzy. I'm from Boonton, New Jersey. My question is, do you agree with LeBron James stating that he is the best player in the NBA? I mean, in the world?
I didn't know he said that. Did he say that? When did he say that? A couple of weeks ago. Wow. Doesn't sound like the LeBron I know, actually. I think that he is the best player in the world. I don't have a problem with it. I don't have a problem with it. I mean, there's probably some people that could argue it, but it's pretty factual. I don't think anybody could argue with it too much, right? Anybody argue with LeBron James being the best player in the league right now? Anybody? Hands? Nobody? Over there? I know my son thinks he's the best player, and that's good enough for me. You like the Spurs, huh? Yeah. Good. Great team. Love Popovich. But no, I think LeBron, there's so many great players, but you know, when you start thinking about LeBron, Kobe, and Michael, there's just levels of differences. Kobe, to me, when LeBron first got in the league, Kobe was still the best player in the league. But LeBron has turned out right now is probably the best player in the league and one of the best that have ever played the game for sure, without a doubt. And you know something about LeBron that you may not know? LeBron is one of the young players in today's game that is a historian about the game. LeBron, when I first met LeBron, LeBron knew my stats. Now, I was impressed with that because he does not need to know my stats. He knew what kind of player I was, which means that he really watched the game. And so I forever am a big fan of his for not because he knew my stats, but for being respectful to the game, to know about the guys that played before him.
Great question. Thanks, bud. Last audience question. Come on up.
So, you know I'm from Los Angeles, right? Huh? You know this could be a problem with you and I right now, right? Do you think you can handle this?
Maybe.
Maybe? It's just like a Celtic.
My name's Jaden Santos, and I'm from New Bedford, Massachusetts. And I was wondering, what's the difference between college ball and NBA?
Good question. Good question. Good question. Good question. I got to be politically correct here so I don't say anything to get me in trouble. You know, they both have their issues. They both have things that are good and bad about them. And when it's all said and done, the one thing that I like most about college basketball, being a head coach at the University of Cal State Northridge, is that I run my own program. And being in charge of my own program is what I like. If something happens and things don't go well, it's my fault. It's not. I don't have a GM to answer to, someone to give me players and make me do things that I don't want to do with the players. But the players are the same. College players don't have money. NBA players have lots of money. But the problems are the same. You have to deal with them. The one thing I love about college is the nurturing of the young men. The ability to have an effect on the rest of their lives and the ability to mentor them in a way that may give them a different perspective, because the amount of college players that go play pro, it's like a half a percentage point. So even though most of them think they are and want to, they don't. And so my job is to try to help them become better men, better people, and successful citizens. Now that to me is the biggest difference.
Great question, bud. Thank you so much.
I like the Celtic green too, by the way. Remember, I got my career high in your gym. I know, we lost the game. I get it.
All right, Reggie, as you look up at our honors ring, you see guys that you played with, you see guys that you played against, you see coaches that you played for, coaches that you played against. Can you take a minute and reflect on what it means to you to be here today, to kind of sit in the Hall of Fame, tell your story as a great player, a great coach, Just kind of tell everybody in the audience what it means to be here today for you.
You know, as I always tell people all the time that life is about continuing to evolve and continuing to be better. Like I like to think that I'm still evolving. I like to think that I'm still not reached the place where I want. I one day want to be in this building with my picture up there, and that to me would be one of the biggest honors of all time. When you think of the historic factors that go into this, you think about all the numbers and the points scored, all the great stories, all the hard times, where the league was to where the league is to now. It's just a phenomenal building, and the fact that you're here and being a part of this history is even bigger, because when I was a kid, I didn't even have a chance to be in this building. But just to sit here and think about Jerry West, I mean, one of my all-time favorites. I grew up watching Jerry West. I grew up watching, you know, Elgin Baylor, Wilt Chamberlain, Happy Harrison. I grew up watching all these guys play, and to know that they're in this building, it's just kind of surreal for me. And I'm just really proud. I've always had, I'm one of those guys, unlike some couple of guys I know, I'm very happy and very proud to be a mentor. I'm very, very happy to be a role model. I'm just proud to be a part of the history of the NBA and what it stands for. To me, it's been very serious, and I take it very personal.
Reggie Theus, it has been an honor and it's been a pleasure welcoming you here at the Hall of Fame. Ladies and gentlemen, can we give a big, warm Hall of Fame welcome to Reggie Theus?
Thank you, thank you.